When did you start to realize, Whitney, that you were able to communicate, or they were trying to communicate with you?
Back in 1985, in the summer of 85, I started to become very, very uneasy. And it was terrifying. I didn't know why I was so frightened, because I wasn't aware of anything, and I knew there was someone coming around the house, our little cabin in upstate New York, which we'd bought to have peace and quiet because we lived in Manhattan, and instead of peace and quiet in the cabin, I was absolutely terrified. So that was a real problem. And what happened then was that I just, I installed an alarm system. I couldn't sleep at night. I bought guns. It was driving my wife absolutely crazy because, we were supposed to be having a peaceful summer in this cabin, and instead I was going berserk. I was having horrible headaches, which when you're pushing something away and you don't want it to see it or have it in your life, that happens to you, apparently, at least so I'm told since then. And then in October, we had some friends up to the house, and something really very strange occurred. I woke up, and there was this bright light around the house, and I thought, oh, my God, the chimney's on fire. It was cold, and we had the wood stove burning. We didn't have a fireplace. And I jumped out of bed, and I went running downstairs woke up Ann and went running downstairs to get our little boy. There was a loud bang, and everyone in the house was awake, and our little boy was screaming. And I ran downstairs to get him and to get our friends out of the house as Ann was in the process of getting upstairs and doing the same thing. And by the time I had reached the bottom of the stairs, all was quiet. The light was gone and everything. And it was just mystified. And so I told our friends through the door of their bedroom, which was closed, they were downstairs, our bedroom was upstairs, to go back to bed because it was okay. Everything was okay. And I went into our son's room, and I calmed him down and told him to wait and let him get back to sleep, and went back up to bed. Ann had already fallen back asleep because it was, 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And, in the morning we talked about it. We couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And we just sort of let it go because what can you do? I had thought I had seen someone that night peeking in the door of the bedroom, and it was really, really disquieting. But, you wake up in the morning, and, it's a new day, and you're just not... I wasn't a person in those days who thought about anything like that. I hadn't thought about flying saucers since I was a child, and that certainly never even came up in our conversations. We just blew it off, kind of. Anyway, come Christmas, December the 26th, 1985, I wake up again, and there's noise around me, and it doesn't feel right, and I wake up, and I see that I'm in a little confined little space with these little round room with these weird figures darting around in it. And I thought, what the hell is this? And this went on. I thought, it's got to be a nightmare, and I'm trying to really wake up, and I'm not getting anywhere because I'm staying where I am. I'm staying there. And the next thing I know, I'm starting to scream and try to get out of there, and this voice is going, what can we do to help you stop screaming? This gentle female voice. Then it gets very violent. They stick a needle in the side of my head. They rape me with a device that electrically stimulates the vagus nerve and causes an erection. They get semen out of my body, and it's a horrendous experience. Horrendous. And so then the next thing I know, I'm waking up the next morning. This is and I have no real memory of this. I remember I said to my wife, there was an owl in the house last night. She looks like me, like I'm completely crazy. And she says, well, where? And I said, well, I don't know where. And obviously it couldn't have been an owl in the house because the house was all closed up. And there was no chimney, and there was a wood stove, and anything coming down that chimney would have burned up. So there was no fireplace and anything, no way for it to get in. So that evening I finally decided, well, it had been standing on the windowsill. And I go upstairs, and I look at the windowsill to see if there are tracks on it, because there was snow on it, but there is no snow. I mean, there's been no snow during the day, so the tracks would still be there. There are no tracks, and I felt deeply afraid. I was not afraid of aliens. That still hadn't even crossed my mind. I was afraid I was going nuts because, it was like some kind of psychotic break, and I didn't tell my wife about it. Instead, I waited a couple days, and the memories became clearer, and they were so weird, and I was in pain as well. So I went to the doctor, and he examined me, and he told me I had been raped. And I told him what I remembered, and he says, it sounds like you're telling me you were taken aboard a flying saucer by little men. And I said, God, Tom, I must be crazy. I've gone crazy. And he said, well, why don't you see a psychiatrist and let's get into this, because you can't, this can't happen. This didn't happen. Whatever happened, that wasn't it. And I thought maybe it was criminal. I mean, maybe I'd have been attacked by somebody, because I'd written a very controversial book called War Day that was a big bestseller a few years before, that certain people in politics hadn't liked very much. And so I thought maybe someone drugged me, or I thought maybe I'm going nuts. And he was worried about a brain tumor also, so he sent me first to a neurologist, and they did a brain workup, where they check your various brain things about your brain, look up, look down, and all this stuff. And they gave me an MRI scan, and there was nothing wrong with my brain, so that was out. And he decided, well, let's see what happens when you take a battery of psychological tests. So we went in that direction, and the battery of tests showed that I was under a great deal of stress, but that I was mentally normal. There was no trace of any psychotic, any indications of psychosis. So what am I going to do with that? I was totally perplexed. Because it still hadn't occurred to me that there could be anything even remotely real about something so idiotic as that. So I got to reading a book. My brother had sent me this book for Christmas as a joke called Science and the UFOs, just seemingly by coincidence. I've wondered often if it was a coincidence, because I was reading along in the book, and I'm sort of enjoying it. And I come across a passage about an alien abduction, and it sounds like what happened to me. And there is mentioned a guy, Bud Hopkins, who researches this, and he lives in Manhattan, not far from where we live. So I call him. I go over to see him, and this house is full of UFO books and all this stuff, and I go over there, and we're really immediately put off, and I'm just not wanting to be a part of that world. So he says he wants to hypnotize me to get more detail, and I say no, thank you. I would rather not do that, because you're not a licensed hypnotist. He was an artist, and I'm not going to be hypnotized by some guy who has just read a book about it. So he actually got me to probably the best forensic hypnotist in New York, which was Dr. Donald Klein, the chief of the New York State Department of Psychiatry, who had, contrary to what you may read in the papers about hypnosis, solved many cases by helping people, using hypnosis, helping people remember things like the license numbers of cars that ran them down and hit and runs and all kinds of things. So he was definitely quite capable and very definitely the real deal. So he put me under hypnosis, and the first time he did it, it covered the thing that had happened in October, and I had just mentioned that because it was kind of weird, and I figured, well, let's see if this helps. And I just panicked. I was screaming like a maniac. It was horrifying. I went berserk, totally screaming in his office. People were about to call the police from other offices. And he calmed me down and pulled me out of the hypnosis. And he said, listen, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but we're going to just take this very slowly. And about a week later, I went back and we covered the incident that had happened in December, and that's the genesis of the book Communion, and because it's a description of that experience and how it affected me. So that's the basic story.
Now, I got to ask you a question, Whitney. How did your Anne take it when all this was going on?
Well, that was a real problem because during the period between the time it happened and the time I began to get it focused and to realize I wasn't crazy, I thought I was insane. I thought I was going to be a psychotic and she was going to be saddled with a psychotic husband. And I was trying to convince her to divorce me. I wouldn't divorce her because I had no reason to. But I was trying to convince her to, and she was very upset about this because she didn't want to divorce me. We were very much in love. So then this happens, and I come to the conclusion that it may have been in some way real, this insane thing. And I told a friend, a longtime friend, about it. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to tell Anne. And he said, well, just tell her and see what she says. I said, well, I don't know what will she say? I told him about our friction, and I said, as soon as she hears this, she is going to want a divorce. And he said, well, let me tell you something. I want you to talk to my in-laws, my wife's parents, because it has happened. They lived about a mile from us, and they had actually seen these little beings in their backyard while they were eating breakfast just a few weeks before. And they were watching them and wondering what the hell they were.
Now, hey, Whitley, we got to take a commercial break for the radio stations. We'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. People, you want to stay tuned because what Whitley has to say is a lot. Again, you want to check out his new book. And better than that, go out and get it. It's called A New World. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. You're listening to Gary on Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark, and we'll be back.
Scintillas in the stream, hoping for what's true. I'm trawling for honor in this shallow pool. Borealis starlit crown arches over the Puget Sound. Berenice's hair drapes the horizon to the Where is my lucky star tonight? The seventh sister